Hey everybody, this is Mitch. So in the past 3 years, I have done a tremendous amount of data importing, and I will kind of assembled a bunch of tips and tricks that I've learned over the past couple years, especially the last few months. I've just seen little bitty things that I've learned to kind of help me do my work, and kind of want to pass those along. So again, my name is Mitch Miles. I was an MVP for almost 12 years and worked for Microsoft a couple different times. You can reach me at email or on X, on LinkedIn, or on this YouTube channel. Feel free to subscribe whenever you can. And so let's get into it. Let me introduce you to one of my favorite tools in the whole world. It's called KuTools. It is by a company called ExtendOffice, extendoffice.com. I'll put a link in the description. And it is just about the best $50 you'll ever spend, especially if you do any work in Excel. It's got all kinds of fancy features I use every day, splitting and merging of data from cells, all kinds of stuff. We're going to be in the plus tab, which is the kind of the extra stuff you don't really use on a daily basis. And we're going to do two operations. And what I probably should have started with is when you have a lot of data, like I just got through importing 225,000 records into Dynamics. We don't have Scribe or any kind of big data tool like that, so we're just doing the import. Well, 225,000 is just a bit too much to import in one go. So what I did is I split the import files up into units of 10,000 records and then just imported those one at a time. Yes, it's a bit more manual labor, but it's a little bit easier to control since we have smaller chunks of it. And I use KuTools to do this with. So there's two operations we're going to do. The first is we're going to split the data. So what this is going to do, this is going to split the data between this worksheet and other worksheets. And we can do it on a specific column so that I'm assuming whenever the value changes to do it, or you can do it fixed rows. Now this is just a test I have here. It doesn't have many, so I'm just going to put, I want it to do 100 rows. I do have a data header, and the worksheets names, I can either use row numbers, sequence numbers, which is 1 through whatever, or the default name. You can put a prefix or a suffix on this. I'm just going to call this test. And so what it would be was test-1, and then if it's a suffix, it would be tacked on the end. And when I click OK, it's going to actually cut this apart into a new worksheet with different values in it. Or new workbook, pardon me. A new workbook with different worksheets inside. So we have test 1, which has 100, and then basically, whoops, go back. Test 2, etc. So now that we have our data in different worksheets, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to split the workbook up. And what I'm going to do is you can select which worksheets you want. It defaults to all of them. You can skip hidden worksheets, blank one, and then you can save it as type. If my next part of my process is the direct import into Dynamics, I'm going to want a CSV file, therefore I don't have to convert anything. But if I'm doing additional work, and I can also convert it, which is the default, to just a standard Excel document. So I'm going to split these. I'm going to pick a folder for it to put them in. It's going to just create files from each one of these, just .csv files. And this is what allowed me to cut 225,000 records into chunks. It's actually 17, well, not 17 chunks. It was, I think, 17 plus 6. It was 23 different files that I ended up with because I had two different sets of data that totaled 225. And so now all I do is I go, when I start my import, I pick test 1, import that, import test 2, etc., etc. So this tool is worth its weight in gold. Like I said, I use it for all kinds of stuff on a daily basis. But if you're doing any kind of data manipulation, I'm not getting anything from these guys, no affiliates, not even associated with them. I bought it with my own money, but take a good look at this tool because it's definitely worth it. Like I said, this one thing right here, we did in less than 5 minutes what would have taken an hour to do by hand. So just keep that in mind. Great tool. So one of the coolest features of importing is the ability to delete the data you imported. So this is actually pretty cool. It's something I didn't really actually understood was there, and I've been using this for a very, very, very long time. So what you do is you just select the file that you want, and then you can click the delete button. It's going to give you 3 different options. The first is just to delete this record along with the import file that you were trying to import. So that's what that one does. The next one down will import, sorry, bring it up. The next one down will import all of the records that were imported during the import. And what this does is it creates a bulk delete job. So you basically can select however many of these import files you wish, and it will apply a bulk delete job to each one in turn. In addition, you can check this box here and it will delete the import record itself that had the file attached to it. And so this will happen, and again, so you create this with that, say this is contact imports. If you had multiple records selected, it would create one bulk delete job for each file. Okay, so that's actually pretty cool. So I've used this when you import data and then you realize the data was not it was not good. Maybe you missed a field where you basically when you did your cleanup, you didn't actually do a good job. Okay, and so what happens is you can just say, okay, I want to roll back that transaction, which is a data import. I want to roll back the import, and then I'm going to fix my data, and then I'll re-import it. That's what that's for. And then the final option is if you have a zip file you uploaded. So in some cases, you can actually create, say, a zip file containing contact and account data, and it will upload both of those in turn. I haven't actually used that at all. I know it's been there for a very long time. I've just never used it. But what that does is it removes all the records from all of the data that was imported. So same thing as the middle option. But this is really handy if you need to start over. One thing to keep in mind about the data import is it's actually a bulk delete job. One thing to keep in mind about the bulk import or the import is that it is actually a system job behind the scenes. So what I have here is I've just gone to the system job table within the advanced settings, then I've filtered for import, and then that shows me the imports that have come in. You can cancel an import job by selecting it and then clicking more options and click cancel. That will abort the job. Now, the caveat to that is if you abort the job, it sets the status to failed. Failed jobs you cannot unwind. So the previous tip where we were talking about deleting the data, if you do not let that job complete, you cannot undo it. So found that the hard way, but you can do it. So the reason why you would cancel a job is if errors pop up that are data related. You know, not the standard, hey, I've got a duplicate record or something, but just like, oh, I'm missing this or I'm missing that, or you forgot to populate something in an option set or whatever it might be. So that's why you would cancel a job, but again, you cannot undo what you did. So you're going to have to kind of take that into account. So if you need to be able to undo the job, you need to let it finish and then go and delete the data that was imported, and that will do the same thing. It's really just a time issue thing. So let's take a look at the actual end result of our data import. And what we have here is if you open up the import record, you'll get this record here. And one of the tabs is called failures. And this is the errors that you will see. So a couple things to note. The first is it will give you the error or the situation that caused it to not import. It will also give you the original row number it was in. It gives you, I have it hidden because of confidentiality, it will give you the actual look at the data itself, and then it gives you the error code. The error code is actually kind of important because that gives you the error to look for if you want to find out what happened here. All of these were basically already existed, so that's a valid thing because you've got if you've got your duplicate detection turned on, I should mention that. So what happens here is I see that this code is for if it's already there, so it's a duplicate. So what you can do with this is, the first thing is I want to see things that are not like this. And remember, if we go back to doing the 2,000 or 10,000 records at a time or some smaller number, then what we're going to need to do is filter this stuff out. So what we do here is I'm going to filter by, I'm going to say where it's not equal to negative. And if we have any other errors in here, it'll show up. We don't because there was only 10 here. So We can turn that back off, clear the filter. So that's a way to look quickly to see what you can have. And in a minute, but the problem is this is by import. And like I mentioned earlier, if I have multiple import files, I have to do this one at a time. We'll go into the XrmToolbox here in a bit, and I'll show you how to do this all at once. So anyway, so this is a good way to do stuff. So you get to know the error codes that you get. If you have a specific data item issue, you will find the column heading and the value in some cases that failed. So you don't always get it, but sometimes you do. So you can actually see what caused the problem. Now, one of the coolest things here is I can click on Export Error Rows, and what it will do, it will move the data that's associated with this import and write it out to another CSV file so you can fix the data that did not import if necessary, and then import that specific data again. So this is one of the coolest things. But what if you wanted this data right here? What would you do about that? Well, this is kind of interesting, but let me bring it up for a second. I'm going to pause it so I can open it up, and okay, well, let me show you the first thing. First off, you go here and click on failures, and you're like, you're already showing me failures. Yes, I know, but just bear with me. Okay, so let me go prep that so I don't have any kind of issues pop up. Hang on. Okay, of failures, it's slightly different. This is a more normal view of the data that is inside. So slightly different. I cannot remember if you can actually edit these views or not. I think I tried. I think it was locked down. I can't remember. It's been a long time. Anyway, so if you click on Export Error Rows here, it does exactly the same thing as it does on the other failures thing. So basically just going to export the data that's in this column here as a CSV file. But again, what if I wanted this code information about the error code and the actual error? Well, there's a really weird workaround. Just select everything. Now we can export to Excel, and it's going to export whatever is here. If you had filtered this by that code to remove it, you would only see this. This is a standard export to Excel that's in every other part of Dynamics, no difference at all. So what you're going to get here is you're going to get the actual error message, not the data that caused the error. Now there is a caveat to this, and while I try to limit the number of rows I import at one time, this specific entity or this specific process has a limit of 1,000 records. So if you have over 1,000 errors, you're only going to get the first 1,000. Again, you can possibly limit it by filtering it and doing like that, because again, all of these that are duplicates doesn't do you any good to export because it's a duplicate. You're after the other errors that show up. Anyway, so that's how you get the actual errors off of the import, is by selecting them and then hitting Export to Excel. So the second way I like to pull errors out in MAS is to actually pull the data using the FetchXml Toolbox plugin. So what this lets me do is query the import log table. So let's kind of go through the files or the tables we're going to be using here. Import log is the actual log that we looked at earlier that has the failures and successes and things in it. Import file is the file that we imported. And what we're going to do here, we're linking these two things together, where the name of the import file begins with V8. So that was what I imported last weekend. So last week I imported 23 files. They all started with V8 followed by something. And then when I execute this, I get the errors that were not duplicates. So when I said the error number is not equal to that number, which is the duplicate error, I end up with 3, which is good. But I'd spent a lot of time cleaning the data up, and this is just happened to be when I go back and do the same thing within the other thing within the Dynamics interface, I see that the postal code has a bunch of garbage in it, to be quite honest. So anyway, so this gives you the error code, which you kind of have to. I don't think I've ever found a list of error codes for imports, but they're probably out there somewhere. This is basically data was too large, so we had say. It was on postal code, so that's a 20 or something like that, 20 characters wide, and we had 50 characters or something. Here's the file it was in, and then that is the row number within the file where that error occurred. And normally what I have is I actually have the actual import data. Basically, it's the import data, column, which shows you the value, so you can verify that's what column or what row you're supposed to be on. And then I just kind of cut those out and bring them into to Excel, fix the problems, and then basically re-import those specific records. But this will give you everything. So if I go here and if I want to remove this, so I'm just going to comment it out. If you never use FetchXml Toolbox, this is pretty cool. This commenting out will actually remove an element from being processed without deleting it. So now if I do this, I'm getting a lot of stuff, and I really didn't want to push that button like that. Make it stop. I won't quit. Anyway, I got 225,000 of these. So this is a way for you to see all the data. But like I said, I imported knowing that we had lots of duplicates, and I did that just as a safety thing to make sure that we got all the data. And then here's what it is right here. So again, these are all the same. Which is the duplicate. So ends in 063 or 0685 and shows you the file, and that's pretty much it. So very, very handy tool, and I really like using it. So anyway, so you can find the error data either by doing it directly in the interface or going to FetchXml Builder and actually pulling all of it. And this is good if you need to do it at the end, because what you can do is you can copy out the error column and then paste that into what I do is I paste it in Notepad. It has string symbols on the ends you got to delete, and then I can cut that in and save that and import that into Excel and fix it. So that's kind of the way I do it. Anyway, so that's it on finding errors. So let's talk a little bit about data maps. So data maps is one of the last things that is created when you create an import or perform an import. There's a field at the bottom. It's like, would you like to save your field mappings to a new data map? And when you do so, it will create a record for that. So under the data management section of the advanced settings, you'll see data maps. And here's a list of the ones that I have. So what I generally do is, if I ever make a change that's needed to be carried forward, I always save a new data map, and I have a habit of just putting the date that I did it, like this was November 2nd, July 25th, etc. And that way I see when I did it last. And then what I will do is the ones that are not used anymore, I will just go and basically select it and then just disable it or deactivate it. So I do that. That's just a cleanliness thing that way, because this is the list of stuff that shows up in your data maps whenever you perform the import itself. So you don't want too many that are confusing to other people especially. So if you're not the only person doing this, you really need to maintain this list properly. So like this letter master here, everything you see here is a different style of data coming in. So different types of data that I have. Just additional fields mostly. Additional fields are just different fields, things like that, and that we have just different ones I can pick. The other cool thing that I like to do is you can move these data maps between installations of Dynamics by just doing an export and an import. So when you export it, it just writes out the XML file. It's pretty easy. And I found one day a very cool thing when I was trying to figure out what the heck did I actually do. So if you go over to the file that was exported and you click on it and say I would like to open it with Excel. Sorry, let me get my thing out of the way. Say I want to open this with Excel. It's going to ask you a couple questions. It may ask you a couple questions. I want to import this as an XML table, and it doesn't really have a schema, so it's going to basically create a schema based on the actual data, and then you can turn that off with that checkbox right there. So this gives us some pretty interesting information. Again, this is just the data that is inside the XML file itself. What I was referring to is I had performed an import months ago. I don't really know what went where, and by looking at the XML file I can find it. So The source attribute name will be the column in the CSV file or Excel file, and then the target attribute will be the actual attribute within Dynamics. This happens to be on a contact, as you can see over here. And basically, some of this is kind of hard to interpret, but really what I think it is, this do not phone is a 2 option. So no is a 0, DNC is 1, or blank is a 0, litigator is a 1. So these are the basically the values there. Address type code, we have residential converts to that option set value, and then customer type code is set to owner, or if it's owner, it's going to be set to that value. So basically, if you didn't remember or haven't done it before, whenever you have an option set, it scans the import file in that column, pulls out all the unique values, and then you have to map from what it found to what you have. Either that, or you could ignore a value and it will not put it in there. So that's what those are. And this happens on any data point that is an option set value. But anyway, this is very handy just for documentation purposes, because like I said, I used it because I just plain forgot. I said, okay, it's been months. I don't even remember what did I actually import. And the reason I did that is because I needed to modify it, and I had several of these, and I didn't know which one fit more closely to the data that I was beginning to import. So I just exported them out and took a look. Okay, this one matches closely, so that's it. But anyway, this is just a really handy little tip that I found just kind of accidentally.